Welcome to the LATAM MedTech Leaders Podcast, a conversation with leaders who have succeeded or plan to succeed in Latin America. Please subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher, and etc. It's my pleasure today to be in the company of three interesting people, professionals who also are consultants from Slalom, an international management and technology consulting firm headquartered in Seattle and founded in 2001. The first professional is our expert is Thomas Celerier. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Thomas. He's the head of their Slalom's healthcare, MedTech, and life sciences businesses, teams, and portfolio of clients for the Palo Alto offices in California. Marcel, I hope I can pronounce your name correctly, Gradidge is the director in the business advisory unit in the Silicon Valley market, and Gautam Narayan is a leader in the emerged supply chain division and is based in Boston, Massachusetts. All of them come from a diverse background, managing global projects and teams. They all have experience in international relationships with careers, professional, personal lives spanning in multiple locations, including Australia, Colombia, Mexico, South Africa, Europe, India, and North America. So, wow, I mean, this is a lot of geographies and cultures, and I'm really excited to be here with you guys. Welcome, gentlemen.
Well, thanks for having us, Julio.
Excellent, Thomas. So, please, let's get started with talking about Slalom. What is it? What is it that you guys do, and how you guys help companies succeed in Latin America?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, and looking forward to the conversation. So Slalom is a management and technology consulting firm. We're focused on three main areas, helping our clients with their strategies, their technology project, as well as just overall business transformation. As you mentioned, we were founded 20 years ago now, headquartered in Seattle, but we've grown quite nicely and organically through outside of the US markets. We're very much present in 35 plus locations in the US, but we're also in Australia, in Japan, in Canada, and in the UK and Europe. We've grown one consultant at a time, very much focused on preserving our culture, which is both client-centric, but as well as employee and collaborator-centric. So we're now a $2 billion company in terms of revenue. We got a nice portfolio of clients across several industry segments, so including pharma, medtech, and healthcare, but also pretty much all other client segments. Healthcare and life sciences is a big share of what we do. It's probably between, if you take a look at the typical Slalom office, it's between 20 and 30% of our revenue and team. One of our differentiators is that we have a combination of a very local and localized team, very much centered on the client and companies or governmental organization and association we work with. We live in the same community, right, that we work. We augment this with the global technology center and teams, and also a network of partners. So really leveraging the strengths of this hybrid model, if you will, to best serve the needs of our clients.
Very good. And you guys have ample experience in Latin America, right?
Yeah, so we do follow, our clients with their global needs, and a lot of our clients, have global locations. So for specific project that, Marcel and Gautam are going to comment on, we do have, assist our clients with their operation in Latin America. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So let's get started with you, Thomas. What's your personal and professional relationship with Latin America? How you first got involved with the region? I mean, by listening to your accent, I imagine you come from France. So how is it that you got connected with Latin America somehow?
Yeah, I have the Latin branch in my accent, at least being a French French native, but yeah, I've been now for 16 plus years in the US, and my ties are twofold, right? So first, I have the pleasure of working with these gentlemen and serving our clients in these regions, and then on the personal side, actually, my wife is from Colombia, from Barranquilla.
My hometown as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we met over there. I've been there, multiple times, right? Our family visiting as well. So that's both, I'd say, a professional and personal relationship as far as I'm concerned.
Perfect. All right, so let's get started with Marcel. So what's your story, Marcel? What's your relationship with Latin America on a personal, professional level?
Well, I think professionally, it's been exciting. I used to work for a company called British Airways, and I was a financial manager there. And part of the region that I looked after was LATAM, and that was way back. So, I don't want to give away my age. I'm still 16, but yeah, I think I had a lot of business dealings and was lucky enough to travel to the region very young in my career. And I still have relationships, personal relationships in LATAM, across Argentina, Brazil. My neighbor, very close neighbor, is Brazilian, and we have too much cachaça, but it's probably good for the system. And actually,
Caipirinhas.
Yeah, my grandfather, who's French,
really?
lived in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, for a number of years, and we still have family connections in
nice.
Argentina. So I think back in the days of ship travel and not necessarily air travel, a lot of relationships were built that were generationally strong. So yeah, we still have a good connection there. So yeah.
Very good. All right. So what about you, Gautam?
Yeah, so my professional experience with Latin America comes through leading large supply chain and business transformations with global companies that have a presence in Latin America. So, for example, the most recent work that I've done included working with 11 countries in the Latin American region, evolving their supply chain capabilities. On the personal front, I don't have any familial ties like the other two gents on the phone, but have long been in complete love with the music and the art and the culture and the sport of the region, like most other people. Yeah. So it's an absolute pleasure for me to be here, Julio.
Excellent. I'm very happy to hear that. It's certainly a sexy region. That's how I like to call it. Some countries are sexy than others. Venezuela is not that sexy anymore, but that used to be a great country. Yeah, Colombia is probably top of the list of sexy countries in the region. Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico is a great place, etc., etc. Mexico is a beautiful, beautiful country. Lots of culture, great food, and great people. Anyway, so let's get to the heart of the conversation today, gentlemen. So what trends do you see happening in Latin America that are relevant to our discussion about how companies can succeed in Latin America selling their pharmaceutical or medical technology products? So let's start with, I don't know, Marcel, Gautam, who's going to be first?
I can start, and then I think Gotham's got a good supply chain story to tell. So I think for me, working with, large pharmaceutical companies that are focused on, the commercial side of the business, I see the trends as, the region wants to get more engaged and more mature in dealing with some of the larger US pharmaceutical companies. I believe that, through my interactions with leaders of very large distribution organizations in the region, there's keen interest to evolve their business and learn from, best practice. So as we engage with, very senior people in these organizations, the question always comes like, how can we get better? How do we get, more mature in the space of, the commercial side of pharmaceutical organizations? I think COVID definitely changed the way that, LATAM engages with global pharmaceutical companies, and it's only going to improve, more as, drug development, the cycle of drug development is going to get shorter, which means that, the cycle of patents and availability of, generic drugs is going to be exposed a lot more in LATAM, so that, LATAM should, consider the manufacturing concept of, what other regions around the world have adopted in terms of, looking at patents that are, coming up to expiration, and looking at how they can utilize those patents to develop the generics that are, drive down a lower price for, consumers and patients within those regions.
All right, excellent. Gautam, what do you have in mind?
Yeah, so my observations based on LATAM are this, right? I think so. Supply chain is a focus not just in LATAM but globally, and especially over the last 2 years. Supply chain is the one function that has been heavily burdened because of the pandemic and because of supply constraints. Now, especially in this sector, you're dealing with long lead times, right? So supply by default is a constraint. So that puts even more burdens on companies to actually get some of these drugs or products to the end customer on time, right? So that's a big observation that companies are choosing to invest in because there's real opportunities to become more efficient. That's one. The second is if you look at the region, a lot of countries in the region operate on a distributor model. Right now, you might have affiliates in these countries for a lot of these companies, but the relationship with the distributor is paramount, because those distributors will then sell to wholesalers who will then sell to clinics and hospitals, and then there's a whole separate private market. So as you can imagine, in a supply chain that has so many different nodes, there's also just as many failure points, right? And all of these different partners are at varying levels of evolution when it comes to maturity with their processes, with their systems, with their understanding of the market, with the relationships, with the data. So for a lot of leaders that oversee Latin America, trying to really get efficient and evolve the maturity across these different stakeholders is another big focus. How do we just get the data to even understand what is happening in the market? How do we visualize it? How do we figure out what those pressure points are? Because it's really difficult. And you add to that complexities, and even the distributors might be regionally headquartered and based in Uruguay, for example, but the end market might be Peru and Bolivia and Paraguay. So to really understand what is happening at the patient level, that information has to go through so many different layers that truly understanding what is happening on the ground in these different countries in the region is really challenging.
Yes, it is. It's a great point. Mm-hmm.
So that is another big focus and an area of opportunity for the Latin American region as a whole. And there's some that are more mature, there's some that are more evolving.
Yes,
but across everything that I'm seeing, you combine that with just the pressure that these companies are under, and based on what Marcel said, there's a lot of opportunity.
Very good. I'm glad to hear that. All right, so that leads me to my next question is, how do you see the region as a land of opportunity for pharmaceutical medical device companies to sell their innovations? Do you see Latin America as a great market, or as a so-so market, price-sensitive market? How do you see these countries? So Marcel, let's start with you first.
I think as pharmaceutical companies and medical device companies realize the peak in revenue generation in a lot of Western countries, the opportunity lies in regions where the revenue opportunity is bigger and it hasn't been realized because of lack of investment, lack of strategic engagement and investment. And I think definitely LATAM is one of those areas where there has not been the level of investment that should have been some time ago. But I think as organizations mature and as revenue within these regions, these more mature regions, hits a peak, then leaders in those organizations are definitely looking for further revenue generating areas. So the other thing to consider is just the adoption of technology, the inclusion of different folks in clinical trials, CROs setting up more operations in LATAM because of the availability of patients that could be part of trials. That definitely leads to a further investment in the regions. I think one of the things that has prevented large pharmaceuticals from investing is sometimes that political stability. But as the region becomes more stable, and there are a few changes that happen, but I think business still continues, right? So I think large companies are realizing that political the level of political engagement is different in LATAM as it is to say in the US, and the engagement of folks on the ground in making sure. So like as Gautam was saying, like when I think of the distributors that we work with, they are keen to get that further investment and engagement with large pharmaceutical companies because they have the skill set. So you have people that are definitely academically skilled to fulfill the functions of a pharmaceutical company. They just haven't had the opportunities that have allowed them to do that. And then what you see is people move out of the region and they go to, like the US, where the jobs are and where, organizations will look at those skill sets and say, hey, I'd love to have you work for my company. But what the tech industry is driving as they expand around the world is that they're setting up operations in LATAM as an example. And it's proving to be very stable. It's proving to be a very successful business model. And then you have the followers, which is the more established industries saying, hey, hold on a second. If the tech industry is able to open an office in Brazil or Argentina, attract really good talent, we can drive really good value and innovation out of there, then why aren't we doing it? So I think, for regions like LATAM, I think, the tech industry has been both a blessing and, sometimes a challenge when it comes to social media. But I think from a business perspective, definitely, has made people think differently. And then also, COVID, when we think about COVID and the ability for people to be in an office, in a physical environment in the US, that requirement is gone. So the ability to work remotely, the ability to deliver the same results, at a price point that becomes more attractive for an organization, it's a win-win, right? So I'll pause.
Agree. Good
Yeah,
comments.
and I would add, Julio, maybe like, specifically to the pharma sector, right? Like another trend is and potential for the region is like reducing the dependency to China, right? And right, shortening the supply chain, right? So
Nearshoring. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, reshoring the production capability. So we, of course, hear a lot about, like, actually you were mentioning Puerto Rico's, right, potential, since a lot of the major drugs are already produced there, and it's of course part of the US, right? But that's very true for the rest of the Latin American region as well, right? As the manufacturing process and capacities are brought back closer to the market. So
yes, yeah, well said. Actually, my home country, Colombia, has a very, very aggressive campaign. The government, as an entity called Pro Colombia, is the pro-investment agency of the government to promote companies to invest in the country. And they have a very aggressive campaign to bring nearshoring to Colombia, to take advantage of this opportunity that Trump and China, the fight that they were having and all that. He created that opportunity for countries like Colombia to bring.
And Julio, we are seeing the results of that, right? Based on my observations, we do.
Okay.
Yeah, we know of companies opening up affiliates in Colombia. That is
really
happening. So there is definite positive traction there outside of the usual suspects in terms of manufacturing in Brazil, Mexico, so on and so forth, right? And I want to build on a couple of points that the gent said here. Because of the supply chain constraints and the challenges in trying to understand the markets, I think companies are investing in getting closer to the markets and even better, being in the markets. That's right. So that is bearing fruit. There's a couple of other things I'm noticing. One is similar to the COVID vaccine, there's a tendency for a lot of these countries to want to go to a single dose treatment or drug.
Yeah.
So what that is actually doing is resulting in a lot of investment in innovation to trial and commercialize new drugs and new products, because in a lot of these countries, and especially the rural areas, the clinics won't, people won't even come back for the second dose because it's just challenging.
Exactly.
Right. So there's a definite push because of those socioeconomic reasons, and that is being channeled into trying to trial and commercialize new products. And then on the third front, the government intervention, right? I think, for example, Mexico, the government has created a whole separate procurement body that will oversee the procurement of most pharmaceutical drugs within a certain criteria, right? Whether that's a pill or an injection or whatever that might be. And a lot of these countries are also tender-based. So now you combine the two, and if you do want to actually live up to the promises you made based on the tender, you won't even know until last minute, right? But what that means is you need to be prepared to actually meet that tender quantity and more or less, right? So that takes a whole bunch of flexibility on the manufacturing side, on the supply chain side. So a culmination of all of that, I think, is fueling incredible investments in the areas of manufacturing and clinical and commercialization and data and technology, and just becoming overall more efficient with how you do things in the region.
Yes. Yeah, you're bringing up a good point. That tender-based procurement process in Latin America is very common. I just finished writing an article about the opportunities that Chile represents for medical device companies specifically. I found out, I didn't know about these agency dedicated to purchasing products for the whole healthcare system. Same happens in, as you said, Mexico, and same happens in Panama, that I'm familiar with that country for professional reasons. And I'm sure it happens in other countries. In Venezuela, I'm sure it happens. So is there, in Brazil, probably happens. I mean, Brazil has a very centralized healthcare system as well. So yes, it's definitely the way to operate in Latin America through tenders. So, all right, guys, let's talk about individual countries before we end the show, because we're already at 23 minutes. Looks like we can talk about this for the whole day. But let's talk about individual countries. What's been let's pick the top economies in the region. Let's talk about Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, Argentina, right? And I like you guys to talk about the Pacific Alliance, if you've heard about it, and I want to hear your thoughts about it, because it's definitely a trend that is beneficial for pharmaceutical companies or medical device companies that want to see Latin America as a unified bloc, like it happened in Europe 30 years ago or something. So let's start with Mexico. What do you guys think about Mexico? Marcel, let's start with you.
I think obviously there was a change of leadership, and that led to a change in the way the country approached some business engagements, and a lot of the reliance on Mexico has been on trade with the US because of just close geographical component. But then I think Mexico, like many countries in LATAM, is looking, to Tomas' point, there are other countries that want to invest in LATAM and in Mexico in particular because of it's like very mature manufacturing industry. Like, I mean, Mexico, if I go into my kitchen and I open my refrigerator, it's made in Mexico. If I look at my car, it's made in Mexico. And it's the same applies for drug manufacturing and medical devices. So I think as Mexico evolves from just that reliance on US manufacturing and looking to expand more globally, I think the opportunity opens a lot of doors for investment, because people want a skilled workforce where they can move production and it's not going to cause disruption. It's going to be an easy skill set for people to just adapt to and get up to speed. So I'm very buoyant on Mexico's future in the short term. I know that we're still in this COVID environment, and I wish somehow that Mexico would focus a lot more on some of those relationships and expanding their role as a global manufacturer, while there are constraints on people not necessarily just buying from Asia, but like looking in the region.
Yeah, and Mexico looks more like a North American country rather than a Latin American country in many ways, especially now with the renewed free trade agreement with Canada and the United States. So yeah. All right. So Gautam, what do you have in mind in terms of Mexico?
Yeah, many of the things that Marcel said. Look, the perception is that Mexico is the most stable economy and place to do business in across manufacturing, technology, all of these different areas, right? So I think that perception of stability and the obvious benefits they have geographically, I think positions Mexico really well. The other opportunity for Mexico, I think, is to cater to a lot of the Caribbean, Central America and Caribbean countries, and take away some of their reliance on China and India and gain some efficiencies there, right? So I equate Mexico a lot with India in that sense, because they're geographically and economically and politically well positioned to help out the general region and their neighbors.
Yeah. I've had the opportunity to visit Mexico probably 4 or 5 times, and I really love the country, the culture, the infrastructure, the highways. Everything is quite a developed country and has a great history and is so diverse. I mean, everywhere you go, you find beautiful people, beautiful culture, great food too. So anyway, so let's move on. Let's go down the region. Let's talk about the next one, Colombia, which is the third largest economy in Latin America now, is an emerging market in the region, emerging force. Argentina used to be the third largest. Now, many people will agree that it's now Colombia because of the political instability in Argentina. Although I don't know what's going on in Colombia now, but that's another topic of discussion. Hopefully something good comes out of it. I think that what's happening in Colombia, what just happened in Chile, is a process that a lot of these countries have to go through. It's a process of maturing to realize that we have deep issues. Let's solve these issues together. Unfortunately, they use violence to fix them, but they all have to go through this. So anyway, let's talk about Colombia. What's your experience in Colombia, Marcel, starting with you? And Thomas, please feel free to jump in whenever you have something to add. I'm sorry, Marcel, go ahead.
Thomas has a close attachment to Colombia.
Yes,
so I think for me, what in the past couple of months, what we've seen is with the distributors we've been working with in the region, there's been a lot of consolidation. There's been a lot of M&A activity, which is positive because foreign direct investment in in the region, in the country, is just positive, right? So obviously, international organizations are looking at, the organizations or companies that service global players in Colombia and saying, well, hold on a second, these companies are actually doing good work. We're actually going to buy them, and then consolidate some of the activities. And I mean, from a government perspective, that foreign direct investment is what every country wants, right? Because it just leads to enhanced GDP and job creation, and capital flow, which eventually goes across the economy and is able to impact, folks that are on the ground. So for me,
and knowledge exchange as well, knowledge transfer.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's just been positive for me in the past couple of months. I know that the folks on the ground in Colombia were like, they didn't know what how to look at this, and we had just private discussions around what it would mean for them, and looking at the positive concepts of investment in the organization, job creation. So definitely, I've seen in this particular organization, there's been a 20% increase in employees just in the short space of time. And one wouldn't think in a COVID environment that you would have that sort of increase in employee numbers in an organization. So it's been, my perception is that it's been positive.
Yeah. Just a quick point before Gautam continues. Colombia is becoming, with Costa Rica, one of the top hubs in Latin America for BPO. I mean, a lot of companies in different sectors of the economy, healthcare and other things, they use call centers in Barranquilla, for example, Thomas, because of the bilingual workforce and very low cost and good education. Bogota, Pereira, and other cities. So.
No, that's true, and I think the education is going to be one of the key for this. Actually, there's also a French company, right, with investing in developing like software engineering talent, and they actually do have now two schools in Colombia, right? So
really, wow, fantastic.
Yeah, they definitely see it, as a country of potential, right? And it's like helping the country find their sector of strengths and their positioning, both with their trade partners and within the broader region that you and the alliances that you were mentioning earlier. So I do see good stability, good potential.
Yeah, agree. All right, Gautam, what do you think about Colombia?
Yeah, Colombia, I think, is the next big star in the region.
Good. Great to
for
hear
all
that.
the reasons Marcel and Tomas said. But I also think that, if you look at the average person anywhere on planet Earth right now, there is a positive curiosity towards Colombia. People are curious about Colombia. And I wouldn't underestimate the role that the cultural revolution that's played a part in it. Right, you look at music and you look at food and you look at
very true.
A lot of social developments led by what you see and what you hear and what you eat has resulted in increased tourism.
Oh yes, I mean, like 100% increase after the peace agreement was signed.
Yes, right, and all of a sudden people are listening to Maluma and J Balvin, and I and there's a curiosity about the region that is extending beyond just the music. It's extending to tourism, it's extending to other businesses, and I think overall the country is really well positioned to become the next big star in the region.
Great point. Awesome. All right, guys, let's talk about the next one down the list. Let's talk about Chile because it's in the Pacific Alliance. I want to keep things in the Pacific Alliance. We can talk about Brazil a little bit and Argentina, but the Pacific Alliance is quite a development in the region. I don't know if you guys have been following the news, but it's the first trade bloc that is really making progress in unifying the region. So it started with, just for the audience to make sure everybody's on the same page, started with Mexico, Colombia, Peru, and Chile as founder countries, founding countries. They are all OECD countries. Peru is in the ascension path. The other ones are members. Chile was the first member in South America. Mexico was the first in the whole region. Then Colombia, and now Peru. And Costa Rica and Panama are candidate members to become part of the Pacific Alliance as well, because Mercosur didn't work, or it's not working. The Andean Pact didn't work. ALCA, I think was how it was called when Clinton was in power, didn't work either. So it looks like the Pacific Alliance will create a uniform market similar to what Europe did many years ago. And for pharmaceutical companies and medical device companies, this is great because they're going to get approval in one country and going to get instant recognition in another country. Eventually, that's going to happen probably in 5 years or something. But they're working towards that path. So let's talk about Chile. What do you guys think about Chile and its potential and what's happening there? Marcel, let's start with you.
Just coming. So for me, that is the big tipping point. For Chile is that Pacific Alliance. Just the ability for to drive like open and inclusive, environment for free trade. It just leads to business, right? I know the pharmaceutical companies that we deal with, some of them don't have representation in Chile today, but they are considering it. I know that we have been part of some of that analysis around. In fact, one of our global pharmaceutical companies is actually considering setting up an actual office in Chile. So, that is like, I think across the 4 countries, you've got like over 200 million people with quite a good, average per capita, income. So, definitely. And then if you think about, one thing that many people aren't considering, companies are considering, but, folks aren't considering is that the population in these countries is younger. So, in Chile, you're looking at a much younger demographic than, say, Japan, so then, when companies are looking at opportunities, you have like a political or an administration that wants to drive that modern approach to business. They're trying to drive political stability, and then with that you have a consumer base that is younger. The per capita income is increasing, and you have quite a lot of like a quarter of a billion people that you can provide services to. So for me, I've considered it an area of focus. I know that for our clients in the pharmaceutical companies, it definitely is.
Okay, excellent. What about you, Gautam?
Yeah, similar. The funny thing is when you think about that region, Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, the Southern Cone region.
The South, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The overwhelming thing that people think about is Argentina. It's the first thing most people think about, right? In terms of just that's where the brain goes because that's where the business is. It's the biggest economy, so on and so forth. So I almost
it's the most beautiful city as well. Buenos Aires is such a charming place. Yeah,
charming place. So I almost feel like Chile has the opportunity to come out of the shadows of Argentina a little bit and present itself as a destination where you can do business just as well, if not better, than Argentina. So as the Argentinian market gets a little bit more saturated, things get a little bit more difficult. I think Chile will reap the benefits of that, and I think they will, naturally be more assertive and opportunistic over the next few years to establish themselves as more of a destination. And for that matter, Uruguay, right? I think you mentioned Colombia as a BPO destination. Uruguay has been doing that very well.
Really?
For a while now. So a lot of companies are moving their call center operations to Uruguay instead, other parts of Asia. So I think overall positive momentum.
Yeah, and going back to my comment about the article that I just finished about Chile, I have a column on MedDevice online and articles about different topics in Latin America. And I just sent the article this morning to the editor. And so Chile is very fresh in my mind. And they have the top human development index of Latin America. It's considered the Switzerland of Latin America. It's quite an extraordinary country. And there's some history behind that we can talk about that later over a few years someday. But it really is was because Pinochet, almost 20 years of dictatorship, and the Chicago Boys. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. They play a major role in building what Chile is today. And they also have the second biggest income per capita, or highest, income per capita in Latin America after Panama, just a little bit higher than Panama. So it's quite an extraordinary country. It's not a third world country, as many people think. It's a second world country in terms of infrastructure and in terms of policies and order, the police force, the way people drive, the way people behave. You feel like you're more in Europe or in the United States than in Latin America. Awesome. So let's talk about Brazil or Argentina. You can speak, Marcel, or both of them at the same time. We're running out of time.
So I can speak to Argentina. I think I think the currency fluctuation has always been one of the concerns when it comes to international business. And the work that we've done with this pharmaceutical company has tried to prevent other countries manipulating that currency fluctuation. So I think stability of the currency has always been part of Argentina's area of focus. And I think business practice, like very mature and very knowledgeable people, but I think part of the challenge has always been just that currency fluctuation. So but I know, it is like we deal with one of the biggest distributors in Argentina, and, just the level of business interaction that we have with folks in the region is extremely enlightening and positive. And I think, the focus on, folks wanting to contribute towards the success of, like I said before, being engaged with this global pharmaceutical company has been certainly acknowledged by our clients. Our clients have said, wow, didn't even know that, business was conducted so formally and so well in this region. So it was positive to see. I think, I guess the commonality in the region is that, when you're dealing with the US, language is not necessarily a barrier, because there is a large Spanish language component in the US, so it makes business very easier to deal with. And I think the learning and the ability to want to grow has been certainly acknowledged by our clients.
Yeah, and just a quick point. I was interviewing somebody the other day here in the podcast, and they were telling me about the level of sophistication of distributors in Argentina and Mexico, and Brazil as well. They said not so much in Colombia, not so much in Chile, but in Argentina you find some top distribution companies. I mean, very well structured, very professional. Yeah. Anyway, Gautam, what do you have in mind in terms of Brazil, Argentina?
Yeah, Argentina, I would agree with Marcel and what you said, Julio. They, and the business results prove it, at least based on everything that I have done with Argentina. They're consistently performing at a level that is above some of the other countries in the region in terms of how they do business. And it tells in the business results. Things are easier, KPIs are better, metrics are better. It's well put together, right? So I think Argentina continues to be just a safe bet for the region that will continue to grow. Brazil, I think the opportunities are endless, right? It's a challenging market because of how diverse it is and various socioeconomic things that are happening. And there's also the perception that the political situation is a little bit more unstable than people might be comfortable with, or businesses might be comfortable with. So that continues to, I think, create some hesitancy in terms of how much people, companies invest in certain things in Brazil. Look, the opportunity is there, right? I mean, it's a huge economy, and they're going to grow, right? But I think that the perception on some of these other areas makes it a little bit more challenging for Brazil specifically. And then you just have the natural challenges with supply chain. When you think about Brazil, big country, different markets, and trying to get into some of the more remote regions, it's different, right? But that's also resulting in some really hyper-localized, innovative solutions that you will find only in Brazil and nowhere else, because it's applicable only there. So it's creating some really interesting solutions that
Exactly.
companies are
200 and something million people. Yeah. And it's a different language than the rest of the region's Portuguese. So anyway, guys, we're close to the end of the show. I don't think anybody else on the internet is talking about these topics. I really, really enjoy our conversation. I think it's very enlightening to companies when they want to learn about Latin America, to hear from experts like you, and hopefully they want to do business with you guys. But Slalom, so Thomas, you did a great commercial for Slalom. I like that, and hopefully this podcast is a platform for you guys and for companies to learn about what Latin America has to offer. So thank you so much, and I look forward to being in touch.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Julio.
Thank you,
we look
Julio.
forward to Slalom in one of these countries very soon.
Excellent. Bye.